let's take a look at some of the things we can do with these data now that they're in Excel. So, I mean, one function of Excel is as a data repository. Back when I was a lawyer, this was very useful to keep track of things like, if I was handling a matter where our client or the company our client was looking at acquiring may have had like 70 or 80 different leases in different cities. We may have just had spreadsheet to track information about those leases, which might have had the location, square footage, rent, things like that. But there's a lot more than just saving and organizing information. We can do things with it. So the two things we're going to look at are generating graphs and using formulas. So let's start by generating a graph. We're going to graph these words. What I'd like a graph to look like is I'd like it to show me visually how many words I have in each of these four categories. And I also want it to tell me what's on which axis. So in this case, I'm going to highlight not just the numbers, I'm going to select and highlight all the data. Now for those of you unfamiliar with highlighting, one thing you can do is hold the shift button down and move with the arrow keys. Another thing you can do, in this case it's very simple, I can select the far left corner, put the shift button down, and then select the far right corner. All of this is highlighted. The next thing we do to generate a graph is go to the Insert menu, and the Insert ribbon will come up. Over here, there's a number of types of charts you can select. One of the things I like to do is take a look at recommended charts, because when you select recommended charts, you can't see it, so hold on a second. When you select recommended charts, we see some options, right? So here, this is what they call a bar chart. Bar I think of as this kind of a chart. Excel calls this a column chart. There's also a pie chart. And some of these tell you what they're used for, right? So to me, this chart makes the most sense. In a later section in this chapter, we'll talk about how and when to choose various types of standard charts. So here's my chart. Notice it has number of words at the top. Still, it has the categories beneath, and then the bars, of course, represent how many words are in each category. And you can see the vast majority. I mean, you can see it from the table, but you don't even have to do much processing to see from this chart that the vast majority of my words are in the still strong category. Okay. So how to make a graph? You select your data, you go to Insert, and then I usually like to go with recommended charts. But there's more we can do. I'm going to move the chart out of the way. That's nice. I'm actually going to delete it. So also, charts can be copied and pasted into things like a Word document. So just like you do any copy and paste, you can copy and paste the chart. But I'm going to go ahead and delete it by selecting the chart and then hitting delete. In a later video, when we focus on graphs and charts, we'll talk about how to make some alterations to your titles, your axes, and things like that. Let's say I want to know, let's talk about using formulas. So let's say Excel has some built-in formulas, and sometimes we want to design our own formulas. Let's say we want to know how many total words we have in our list. To do that, there's a formula called AutoSum. So I'm going to first I'm going to deposit the total here, but I want whoever's looking at this to realize that this is the total. And since total is not an ordinary item, it's a sum, I'm going to put the title total in bold. Here's how to auto sum these figures. So what you do is you select all the numbers you want to add in all the cells, including the cell where you want to deposit the final sum, right? And that's this bottom cell. And then up in the home menu, there's also a formulas menu. You'll see auto sum right here. Notice the Greek capital sigma. We're going to come back to that in a later chapter. But that capital sigma, think of as sum. You can actually get that from the home ribbon up here in the right-hand corner. And this means the total words in my list were 2,362. Now let's say I also want to turn this into a grade. So let's say I'm going to consider still strong to be worth 100%. If it's still strong, I get 100% for that. So I'm going to put in a 1 there for 100%. Pretty good, let's say, is worth an 80%. Right? I've 80% mastered 80% of them. I'm going to type in 0.8. And let's say time to practice. Well, that's a little. Let's say that's going to be 0.6, and overdue is 0.5. So it's like still strong is like an A. Pretty good, I've made into a B. Time to practice is like a D. Let's change that. Let's make it a C. And overdue is like a D, right? Kind of how to think about it. So one of the things we can do then is make a formula that gives us, using these weights, these are called weights, kind of an average score. So what am I going to do? I'm going to multiply. So this is score for the category. And now I'm going to have a weighted score for each number of words. Notice I'm widening that to make room. A weighted score. So what that means is I'm going to multiply 1,908 by 1. Now I could type that in. I could multiply this on a calculator and type it in. But here's where things get awesome. I'm going to type in a formula. So that means I start with equals. So with Excel, when you have a formula, always start with equals. That tells Excel a formula is coming. And for my number of words in the category still strong, notice that's in cell B2, column B, row 2. So that's B2. Type in the cell address. And I'm going to multiply that by the weight in column C, row 2, cell C2. Whoops. Notice it no longer highlighted the cells. Because for multiplication in Excel, you need to be explicit. Times C2. That's the asterisk, which if you're having trouble finding it, use the shift key and the number 8. And now I hit enter. Not very exciting, right? 1,908 times 1 is 1,908. And now I could keep doing that for each column, but now it gets interesting. If I select that score, see if you look really closely, I'll try and make this a little bit bigger here. In the lower right-hand corner, there's a little square, and if I move my cursor to rest over that square, it turns into a little plus sign. Hold your left mouse key down and drag. And what this has done is by dragging it, Excel has copied the formula from row 2 to row 3 to row 4. And let's take a look up in the formula bar. Excel has made adjustments. This was B2 times C2. This is B3 times C3, B3 times C3. So my weighted score in the pretty good category is 71.2. Another way to see the formulas in a spreadsheet, if you go up at the top and where you see formulas, select formulas. In the middle, there are some options. Towards the right, if you select show formulas, it's going to show you the formulas that are used. And now look at that, B2 times C2, B3 times C3. Imagine if I had 70 different rows here and I just dragged and dropped. Imagine how much time that saves. It also shows you why having formulas is valuable. All right, now what we want is some kind of composite score. Right? So the composite score is going to give us a percentage we're going to get by adding up the total weighted score and divided by the total number of words. So I'm going to do an auto sum here. So my weighted total is 2205.9. And now I can make a grade simply by dividing 2205.9, my total weighted score, by the total number of words, 2362. How do I do that? I simply put a formula in here. I'm going to type equals, and then I'm going to type my weighted score on top, that's D6, and divide it, that's over by the question mark on your keyboard, the slash, that slash is division, and then B6. And now it gives me a decimal. We think of our grades as a percentage, so you can format this as a percentage, go over to home, and you see over in this region, you see options. You can program it as money. We're going to program it, format it, sorry, as a percentage, and it rounds it. I got about a 93%. So I'm getting about, it looks like an A in my Duolingo Russian course. Yay. In the next video, we're going to show one more example in Excel of something you can use to keep track of your grades. We think if you set up an Excel file like that, it'll be very useful for you. You could set up a file like that for each of your courses.